I'm clawing these words into the void, bleeding them out because I need someone, anyone, to feel the gut-wrenching, soul-shredding agony of having your entire existence erased while cowards watch, their eyes glued to the floor, their spineless silence louder than my screams. 3 months ago, Marcus Vane, my supervisor, this smug, power-drunk shell of a man, loomed over my desk in a fluorescent-lit hellhole of cubicles, his finger stabbing the delete key, wiping out a year of my life. My blood, my sweat, my 3 a.m. breakdowns, my everything, gone in one click. 19 people sat there, clutching their coffee cups like lifelines, their faces blank, their courage non-existent. Redundant clutter, he called it, his voice dripping venom. Start over, kid. Do it right. The air stank of stale toner and betrayal, and I swear my heartbeat was a hammer smashing my ribs. That wasn't humiliation. It was annihilation, a public execution of my soul. But then my phone buzzed, an unknown number slicing through the haze, and 30 seconds later, I was gripping a live grenade. A $400,000 offer from a rival company who saw what Marcus was too blind to. Before I rip open the wound of how I watched him choke on his own arrogance, hit that like button, subscribe, share this with anyone who's ever been crushed by a tyrant who thinks they own your worth. This isn't just my story. It's a warning screamed in blood and rage. Revenge doesn't need a plan when your enemy hands you the blade. Let me drag you into this festering, pulsating mess, this raw nerve of a memory, because it didn't start with Marcus deleting my work. It started 18 months ago when I stumbled into this suffocating office, a grey, flickering purgatory designed to choke hope, carpet stained with despair, lights buzzing like dying wasps, air so thick with resentment it coated your lungs like tar. I was hired at Drencher Solutions as a process coordinator, a title that sounds like it was crafted for someone who thrives on spreadsheets and self-loathing. Truth? It was a sinking ship, clients abandoning us faster than rats fleeing a storm. The last person in my role vanished after 6 months, leaving a sticky note that mocked, "Good luck." Marcus, my supervisor, was a walking void, a man who thought emotions were a glitch in his perfect machine. He'd strut through the office in his cheap, shiny suits, barking about streamlined workflows like a prophet of corporate apocalypse. To him, people were cogs, clients were numbers, and anything that didn't fit his metrics was a waste of breath. Day 1, he glared at me like I was a smudge on his pristine system. "Don't overcomplicate things," he sneered, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Follow the protocol." The protocol was a sick joke. Cold emails that read like spam, scripts so robotic they could have been written by a broken algorithm, follow-ups that felt like punches to the gut. Our client logs were a cemetery of dead conversations, no warmth, no pulse, no trace of humanity. Clients weren't people to Marcus, they were data points bleeding money. I saw the numbers, 47% account churn in a year. Businesses paying us thousands, and we couldn't even bother to learn their names. So I did something reckless, something insane in that soul-crushing cage. I started treating clients like they were human, like they mattered beyond their invoices. Not with fake corporate gestures. No gift baskets, no polished lies. I listened. I cared. When Tara Velich, who ran a logistics firm, let slip that her warehouse manager's kid was in the hospital, I didn't just nod and move on like some heartless drone. I scribbled it down, my hands shaking with the weight of her pain, and a week later, I called back. "How's the kid doing?" I asked, my voice soft, raw. She was floored, her voice breaking over the line. "Nobody's ever checked in like that," she said, and we talked for 40 minutes. About her kid's surgery, her warehouse chaos, her sleepless nights. It wasn't just a call. It was a lifeline. When Jonas Creed, who owned a chain of auto shops, grumbled about supply chain nightmares, I didn't just log it as client issue and move on. I asked about his biggest pain, remembered he loved restoring old Mustangs, and a month later, I sent a quick note, "Find that rare carburetor yet?" He laughed, his voice warm for the first time. "You're the only one who gets it," he said. That call turned into a $15,000 contract expansion. These weren't grand gestures. They were human moments, threads of connection that stitched our clients back to us. I wasn't a coordinator. I was the glue holding this rotting, sinking company together, the only thing keeping it from collapsing into oblivion. Marcus didn't see it. He'd hover over my desk, his cologne a toxic cloud, his eyes narrowing at my unnecessary notes like they were a personal insult. "Why's this call logged 20 minutes over standard?" He'd snap, his pen stabbing my reports like he was gutting a fish. "You're tanking our efficiency stats, kid." I tried to explain. God, I tried, my voice shaking with frustration, my hands clenched under the desk. "Clients stay because they trust us now. Retention's up 41%. Look at the damn numbers." But Marcus didn't care about numbers unless they fit his obsession with speed, with control. He wanted calls under 10 minutes, emails under 50 words, relationships reduced to cold, lifeless checkboxes. He didn't get that Tara was signing bigger contracts because she felt seen, that Jonas was referring us to other shops because I remembered his Mustang obsession. To him, I was a glitch, a bug he couldn't squash, a threat to his sterile, soulless system. The breaking point came at our quarterly review, in a room so sterile it felt like a morgue, the air thick with tension and the faint hum of dying fluorescent tubes. Our CEO, Roland Pierce, was there, droning about metrics when he dropped a bomb that hit like a fist to the chest. Client retention was at its highest in 5 years. The process team's approach is working, he said, his eyes locking on mine. For one fleeting second, I felt pride, a spark of something alive in this dead place. Then I saw Marcus's face, twisted, like he'd swallowed glass, his jaw tight with rage. After the meeting, he cornered me in the hallway, his breath hot, his voice a low growl. You think you're some kind of hero? This company runs on systems, not your pathetic therapy sessions. He shoved a project in my face, a full audit of every client interaction I'd ever handled. Every call, every note, every unnecessary conversation. Prove it's worth something, he hissed, or I'll prove it's not. It was punishment, plain and brutal, hours of soul-destroying paperwork meant to crush me, to break me, to make me beg for his approval. I didn't break. I poured my rage, my pain, my defiance into that audit like it was my last stand. I documented every call, every follow-up, every moment of connection that turned a client into a partner. I showed how Tara's referrals brought in $80,000, how Jonas's contract expansion saved us from losing his entire chain, how every useless conversation about a kid's surgery or a vintage car built trust that kept us afloat. The audit was 67 pages of blood and bone, proof that caring about people wasn't fluffy nonsense. It was the only reason we weren't bankrupt. I finished it at 3 a.m., my eyes burning, my hands trembling, my heart pounding with something raw, something alive. This was my weapon, my truth, my scream into the void of Marcus's cold, transactional world. Then came the day he shattered me. A Tuesday, grey and oppressive, the kind of day where the air presses down on your chest until you can't breathe. Marcus called a department meeting, his voice smug, his eyes glinting with malice as he announced we were reassessing process protocols. He told me to pull up my audit on the conference room screen. I thought, stupidly, naively, that he was finally seeing it, that he'd show my work as proof of what worked. Instead, he turned it into a slaughter. This, he said, scrolling through my notes about Tara's kid, Jonas's Mustang, a client's anniversary party, is a waste of company resources. Personal nonsense doesn't belong in professional work. He read my entries aloud, his voice dripping with mockery, twisting every human moment into evidence of my failure. The room was silent, 19 people staring at their shoes, too weak to speak, too complicit to care. My chest burned, my throat closed, my hands shook with rage I couldn't release. Then he opened the master file, my 67-page audit, my year of proof, and his cursor hovered over delete. This isn't how we do business, he said, his voice cold as a blade. Start over. Do it right. And he clicked. Gone. A year of my life, my connections, my soul, erased in front of everyone. The screen went blank, and so did I. My pulse thundered in my temples, my vision blurred with tears I refused to let fall, my hands clenched so tight my nails drew blood. Marcus kept talking, outlining his new streamlined protocols, but I couldn't hear him over the roar in my ears, the scream I couldn't let out. I was nothing to him. My work was nothing. The clients I'd saved, the revenue I'd brought in, the loyalty I'd built, nothing. I wanted to scream, to shatter his laptop, to claw his smug face until he felt the pain he'd inflicted. But before I could explode, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I stumbled out, my hand shaking, my heart a furnace, and answered. Jade? This is Vellum Consulting. We've been watching Drencher, and we know what you've been doing. The voice was calm, professional, but urgent, cutting through the haze. We want you $400,000 a year, plus equity. You'd run client relations your way. No restrictions. I almost dropped the phone, my breath catching in my throat. Vellum was a startup, a scrappy competitor, small but ravenous. They'd seen our retention numbers climb, heard through industry whispers who was behind it. We know you can't take client data, they said. But relationships? Those are yours. If clients follow you, that's their choice. I stood in the hallway, the fluorescent lights buzzing like a swarm of vengeful insects, and something snapped into place. Marcus hadn't just deleted a file. He'd deleted his own power. The clients didn't trust Drencher, they trusted me. And he'd just cut me loose. I stormed back into the conference room, my heart a wildfire, my blood boiling. Marcus was still droning, his PowerPoint slides as lifeless as his soul. He looked at me, expecting me to crawl back, broken. Instead, I stood taller, my voice ablade. "I'm done," I said, cutting through the room like a gunshot. "I'm resigning. Effective now. I'm joining Vellum Consulting." The silence was deafening, a vacuum sucking the air out of the room. Someone dropped a pen, the sound like a bone snapping. Marcus's mouth opened, then closed, his face paling, his eyes wide with shock. "You can't just," he stammered, but I cut him off, my voice shaking with rage. "My contract allows immediate resignation for hostile workplace conditions. Deleting my work in front of everyone? That's hostile. I'm gone." I grabbed my bag, my notebook, the last scraps of my existence in that suffocating hell, and walked out. Roland Pierce called after me, his voice thin with panic, but I didn't stop. I was done being their punching bag. Vellum's office was a converted warehouse, all exposed brick and raw ambition, nothing like Drencher's corporate tomb. They gave me a desk, a title, Director of Client Relations, and freedom to do what I'd always done, treat people like they mattered. I didn't reach out to Drencher's clients. I didn't need to. By Friday, Tara Velich called, her voice warm but urgent. "Jade, I heard you left. What's Vellum about?" We talked about her warehouse, her kids' recovery, her new shipping contracts. She signed a $50,000 deal by Monday. No hesitation. Jonas Creed called that afternoon, his voice crackling with excitement. "You still into Mustangs?" he asked, laughing. "Drencher's new guy is a robot. I'm thinking about switching." By the end of the week, 4 more clients reached out, not because I chased them, but because they wanted someone who remembered their names, their pain, their lives. Back at Drencher, Marcus was unraveling, his perfect system crumbling like ash. I heard it through the grapevine, clients canceling meetings, contracts evaporating, Roland pacing the halls like a man watching his empire burn. Marcus tried calling Tara, Jonas, others, but they shut him down cold. "We want someone who gets us," Jonas told him, his voice hard. Marcus thought he deleted redundant clutter. He deleted the only thing keeping his clients loyal. By week 3, Drencher lost 55% of its revenue, a hemorrhage they couldn't stop. Marcus was holding emergency meetings, begging clients to stay, but his cold, efficient scripts fell flat, lifeless, useless. He'd mocked my personal nonsense, but that nonsense was why people stayed. Now they were gone, and he was drowning in the wreckage of his own arrogance. A month later, Roland called, his voice thin, desperate, like a man pleading for air. "Jade, we're restructuring. Would Vellum consider acquiring Drencher's accounts? Maybe hiring some staff?" He paused, then added, his words dripping with shame, "What would it take to bring you back?" I almost laughed, the sound bitter in my throat. Bring me back to the place that let Marcus erase me? To the company that only valued my work after it was gone? "I'm good," I said, my voice steady, my hands no longer shaking. Vellum believed in me from the start. I hung up, the click like a guillotine falling. 6 months later, I'm running Vellum's client division, and we're growing so fast we can't hire enough people. Drencher. They laid off half their staff, sold their fancy office, merged with a bigger firm that doesn't give a damn about their name or their history. Marcus didn't survive the merger. Last I heard, he's scraping by on low-level consulting gigs, his LinkedIn profile a ghost town, his reputation a warning to others. Nobody trusts a manager who tanked a company by deleting what mattered most. I don't gloat. I don't need to. The best revenge isn't a trap or a scheme. It's watching someone like Marcus destroy himself while you build something better, something real. He thought he was teaching me a lesson when he deleted my work. All he did was hand me the keys to his downfall. Every client who followed me, every deal I closed, every day I thrive at Vellum. It's a scream in his face, a reminder that his world collapsed because he was too blind to see what was right in front of him. I'm not here to fix his mistakes. I'm here to outshine them, to burn brighter than his failure ever could. If you've ever been crushed by someone who didn't see your worth, scream your story below. Let's tear this silence apart together. Like, share, subscribe. Because this kind of truth doesn't stay buried. It explodes. This is just the start, but let me keep bleeding this out, let me rip it open wider, because the pain doesn't stop, the rage doesn't fade, and the story doesn't end with me walking away. Marcus's face, that smug, self-righteous smirk as he hit delete, it's burned into my skull, a scar that throbs every time I close my eyes. I see it in the flickering lights of that office, in the grey haze of those endless days, in the way my hand shook as I tried to hold myself together. I was 26, barely holding on, pouring everything into a company that didn't deserve me. And he took it all, my work, my pride, my proof that I was more than a cog in his machine. He didn't just delete a file, he deleted me, or at least he tried. But I'm still here, screaming, clawing, refusing to let his poison be the end of me. Let me take you back to those first weeks at Drencher, when I was still naive enough to think I could change things. The office was a labyrinth of despair, cubicles like cages, the air heavy with the stench of burned coffee and broken dreams. My desk was a rickety slab of particle board, my chair creaked like it was mocking me, and Marcus's voice was a constant drone, a buzzsaw cutting through any shred of hope. Efficiency, he'd preach, like it was a religion, his eyes glinting with the kind of zeal that makes you want to scream. I'd sit there, staring at the client logs, pages of cold, lifeless entries, names, dates, invoice amounts, nothing more. No stories, no lives, no trace of the people behind the money. I started small, just trying to survive, but then I saw it, the clients weren't leaving because our services were bad. They were leaving because we treated them like numbers, like cogs, like nothing. So I started fighting back, not with fists but with words, with care, with the kind of human connection Marcus couldn't understand. Tara Velich was my first win, my first proof that I wasn't crazy. Her logistics firm was one of our biggest accounts, but her file was a sterile list of transactions, no warmth, no depth. During a routine call, she mentioned her warehouse manager's kid, a little boy with a heart condition, and I heard the crack in her voice, the weight of a mother carrying someone else's pain. I didn't just log it and move on. I wrote it down, my pen shaking, my heart racing, because I knew what it was like to feel invisible. A week later, I called her back. "How's the kid doing?" I asked, and she stopped, silent for so long I thought the call dropped. Then she started talking, her voice raw, about the surgery, the hospital bills, the way she couldn't sleep. We talked for 40 minutes, and it wasn't about contracts or invoices. It was about her, about life, about the things that make us human. That call didn't just save her account. It brought in $80,000 in referrals, because she trusted me, because I saw her. Jonas Creed was next, a gruff guy with a chain of auto shops and a passion for old Mustangs. His file was a mess of complaints about supply chain delays, but nobody had bothered to dig deeper. I asked him about his biggest headache, listened as he ranted about part shortages, and then, almost as an afterthought, he mentioned a 1967 Mustang he was restoring. I scribbled it down, my hands sweaty, my heart pounding, because I knew this was it, this was how you build something real. A month later, I sent a note, "Find that carburetor yet?" He called back, laughing, and we talked for an hour, about cars, about his business, about the way he felt ignored by every other firm. That call turned into a $15,000 contract expansion, and he started referring us to other shops. These weren't just clients, they were people, with lives, with dreams, with pain, and I was the only one who bothered to see it. Marcus saw none of it. He'd stalk past my desk, his cologne a suffocating cloud, his eyes narrowing at my screen like I was committing a crime. "Why are you wasting time on this nonsense?" he'd bark, his pen jabbing at my call logs. 20 minutes over standard? You're killing our metrics." I'd try to explain, my voice shaking, my fists clenched under the desk. The metrics don't show the whole story. Retention's up because they trust us. But he'd just sneer, his face a mask of contempt. Trust doesn't pay the bills. Efficiency does. He didn't get it. He didn't see that Tara's referrals were because she felt human again, that Jonas's loyalty was because I remembered his Mustang. To him, I was a problem, a glitch, a bug he needed to crush before I infected his perfect, sterile system. The quarterly review was when it all came crashing down, a day so heavy it felt like the walls were closing in. Roland Pierce, our CEO, was in the room, his voice droning through numbers like a funeral dirge. Then he said it, client retention was at its highest in 5 years. "The process team's approach is working," he said, his eyes on me, and for one moment, I felt alive, like I'd done something real. Marcus's face was a storm cloud, his jaw tight, his eyes burning with something dark, something dangerous. After the meeting, he cornered me in the hallway, his breath hot, his voice a hiss. "You think you're saving this company? You're a liability." He shoved a project in my face, an audit of every client interaction I'd ever handled, every call, every note, every moment of connection. "Prove it's worth something," he said, "or I'll prove you're nothing." It was a trap, a punishment, a way to bury me under paperwork until I broke. I didn't break. I poured everything into that audit. My rage, my pain, my defiance. I documented every call, every follow-up, every moment that turned a client into a partner. I showed how Tara's referral saved us, how Jonas's expansion kept his chain loyal, how every useless conversation about a kid's surgery or a vintage car built trust that kept us alive. The audit was 67 pages of my soul, proof that caring wasn't weakness, it was power. I finished it at 3 a.m., my eyes bloodshot, my hands trembling, my heart screaming with defiance. This was my fight, my truth, my middle finger to Marcus's cold, dead world. Then came the day he destroyed me. A Tuesday, grey and suffocating, the air heavy with the weight of 1,000 unspoken screams. Marcus called a department meeting, his voice smug, his eyes glinting with cruelty. "We're reassessing protocols," he said, and told me to pull up my audit on the conference room screen. I thought, God, I was so stupid, that he was finally seeing it, that he'd show my work as proof of what worked. Instead, he turned it into a massacre. "This," he said, scrolling through my notes about Tara's kid, "Jonas's Mustang, a client's anniversary, is a waste. Personal nonsense doesn't belong here." He read my entries aloud, his voice dripping with scorn, twisting every human moment into proof of my failure. The room was silent, 19 people staring at the floor, their cowardice a knife in my back. My chest burned, my throat closed, my hand shook with rage I couldn't release. Then he opened the master file, my 67-page audit, my year of proof, and his cursor hovered over delete. "This isn't how we do business," he said, his voice cold as death. "Start over. Do it right." And he clicked. Gone. A year of my life, my heart, my soul, erased. The screen went blank, and so did I. My pulse was a war drum, my vision blurred with tears I wouldn't let fall, my hands bleeding from my own nails. Marcus kept talking, his voice a distant drone, but I couldn't hear him over the scream in my head, the rage, the grief, the betrayal. I was nothing to him. My work was nothing. The clients I'd saved, the revenue I'd brought in, the loyalty I'd built, nothing. I wanted to scream, to shatter his world, to make him feel the pain he'd carved into me. But then my phone buzzed, an unknown number cutting through the haze. I stumbled out, my hand shaking, my heart a furnace, and answered. "Jade? This is Vellum Consulting. We've been watching Drencher, and we know what you've done." The voice was calm, urgent, a lifeline in the chaos. "We want you $400,000 a year, plus equity. You run client relations your way." I almost dropped the phone, my breath catching, my heart racing. Vellum was a start-up, a hungry competitor, small but fierce. They'd seen our retention numbers climb, knew I was the one behind it. "You can't take data," they said, "but relationships? Those are yours. If clients follow you, that's their choice." I stood in the hallway, the lights buzzing like vengeful wasps, and it hit me. Marcus hadn't just deleted a file. He'd deleted his own power. The clients didn't trust Drencher, they trusted me. And he'd just set me free. I stormed back into the conference room, my heart a wildfire, my blood boiling. Marcus was still droning, his slides as lifeless as his soul. He looked at me, expecting me to crawl back, broken. Instead, I stood taller, my voice a blade. "I'm done," I said, my words slicing through the silence. "I'm resigning. Now. I'm joining Vellum Consulting." The room froze, the air sucked out, a pen hitting the floor like a gunshot. Marcus's face paled, his mouth opening, closing, his eyes wide with shock. "You can't," he started, but I cut him off, my voice shaking with rage. "My contract allows immediate resignation for hostile conditions. Deleting my work in front of everyone? That's hostile. I'm gone." I grabbed my bag, my notebook, the last scraps of my existence, and walked out. Roland called after me, his voice desperate, but I didn't stop. I was done being their victim. Vellum's office was a converted warehouse, raw and alive, nothing like Drencher's tomb. They gave me a desk, a title, Director of Client Relations, and freedom to be human. I didn't reach out to Drencher's clients. I didn't need to. By Friday, Tara called. "Jade, I heard you left. What's Vellum about?" We talked about her kid, her warehouse, her life. She signed a $50,000 deal by Monday. Jonas called that afternoon. "Still into Mustangs," he laughed. "Drencher's new guy's a robot. I'm switching." By the end of the week, 4 more clients called, Not because I chased them, but because they wanted someone who saw them, who cared. Marcus was unraveling, his world crumbling. Clients cancelled, contracts vanished. Roland paced like a man watching his empire burn. Marcus tried calling Tara, Jonas, others, but they shut him down. "We want someone who gets us," Jonas said. Marcus thought he deleted clutter. He deleted loyalty. By week 3, Drencher lost 55% of its revenue. Marcus begged clients to stay, but his scripts were lifeless, useless. He'd mocked my nonsense, but that nonsense was why people stayed. Now they were gone, and he was drowning. A month later, Roland called, his voice thin, desperate. "Jade, we're restructuring. Would Vellum acquire Drencher's accounts? Hire our staff? What would it take to bring you back?" I laughed, bitter and sharp. "Bring me back to the place that erased me? I'm good," I said. Vellum believed in me. I hung up, my hand steady. 6 months later, I'm running Vellum's client division. We're growing, thriving. Drencher. They laid off half their staff, sold their office, merged with a firm that doesn't care about their name. Marcus didn't survive. His scraping by, his LinkedIn a ghost town, his reputation poison. I don't gloat. I don't need to. Revenge is watching him destroy himself while I build something better. Every client who followed me, every deal I closed, every day I thrive, it's a scream in his face. I'm not here to fix his mistakes. I'm here to outshine them. If you've been crushed by someone who didn't see your worth, scream your story below. Like, share, subscribe. This truth doesn't stay buried. It burns. This rage doesn't stop, it doesn't fade, it just keeps burning, a fire that consumes everything. Marcus's face haunts me, that smirk as he deleted my work, as he tried to delete me. I see it in every flickering light, every grey day, every moment I close my eyes. I was 26, fighting to prove I was more than a cog, and he took it all. But I'm still here, screaming, clawing, building something he'll never touch. This is my truth, my revenge, my defiance. Let it burn.